Morning. Today is the 25th of June. It's a Thursday and it's another warm day here in England. It's already about 26 degrees. That's pretty close to 80 degrees for those in the States. There's a lot of people that have been asking me questions about America and racism. Now, I think we're a little bit able to listen to people, and a lot of the anger has kind of gone down. And I just want to give you some of my thoughts on some of the things that people have been asking me. One thing that somebody asked me is they would try to give evidence that the United States is systemically racist, and I would wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And with the laws that we have, I don't believe that. Has there been problems? Yeah. But one of the evidences that the person gave that the United States was systemically racist was that in America, if you're black, you're called an Afro-American. If you're Chinese, you're called a Chinese American. From Mexico, a Mexican American. But if you're white, you're just called an American. And he said, see, that proves that there's racism. And for many of you who are old enough to remember, who've lived in the United States about 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, those people that wanted to be more politically correct started saying that we need to refer, the people on the left, more liberal-minded people, they said we need to begin to refer to people not as white and black, but as African American, Chinese American, and all these other things. And the people on the conservatives said, no, let's just start calling people American. Let's just say, why can't we just be one? And there literally was a division that was forced on that. And so I wouldn't say that is a proof that there is racism. I would say there's proof of somebody trying to be politically correct and it causing more harm than good. Another thing that caused more harm than good is something that actually started in the United States. You'll see things floating around that another evidence that the United States has its root in racism is that the Constitution says that black people are 2/3 of a person. Well, let me kind of explain that a little bit, just from a historical point of view. Number one, this provision in the Constitution was not 2/3, it was 3/5, which is actually a smaller percentage. 2/3 is about 67%, and 3/5 is 60%. So actually it's a lower percentage. And it wasn't for blacks, it was for slaves. Now, why does the Constitution have that in? Well, you have to understand that when the United States is being formed, many people wanted to do away with slavery. But they were afraid to. They were afraid that if they made the hard decision then, it would fracture the United States. And I believe it was either Thomas Jefferson or Benjamin Franklin that said, hey, good morning, if they don't make the decision to end slavery now, in the late 1700s, then slavery will still be gotten rid of in America, but at a much higher price. And that sure is accurate during the American Civil War. But so what about this 3/5 provision in the Constitution? What did that mean? Well, interestingly enough, the South, who owned the slaves, wanted slaves to be counted as one person. Interestingly enough, the people in the North wanted slaves to be counted as one person. Now, so where do we get 3/5? Very simply is this. One of the reasons why those people that held slaves, though they did not believe in the humanity of slaves in the South, one of the reasons why they wanted to be counted as a whole person is that during the census, see, in America, your congressmen are appointed by the population of each state. So there was a feeling that if we could have all of our slaves count as people, we'll have a higher representation in the United States, in the slave states, and therefore we'll make sure more slave laws get passed. Well, people in the North didn't want that. But what they did want is they wanted to say, look, these are people. So they will be counted. If you're not going to allow them to vote, they certainly shouldn't be allowed to count to make you a congressman, to enforce more slave laws. But they should count one person for tax purposes, and that people that own slaves, they needed to be responsible for each person that they own, especially in the area of taxes. And so the provision in the Constitution, though both sides wanted them to be counted as one, I think the South had a little bit more nefarious reason, but they decided that for counting purposes, for the census, for representation, and for taxation purposes, a slave would only be counted as 3/5. Now, that never meant that they were looked at as being only 3/5 of a person. But see, compromises that people make, especially in the political arena, they have rippling effects. Can I say that if you look at the people around you, not the people you see on the news, but the people around you, we've got some good people around us. And the biggest problem that we have is when political groups get people in a fervor and normal people don't solve things face to face as God created us to. So I just want to encourage you, know your history, but also if there's a problem, you may not be able to solve it on a global scale, but you know what, you can solve it? You can solve it on a one-to-one scale. You can see somebody hurting. Look, I was involved in a Facebook post, and somebody had made a comment, and it felt like a racist comment. They said that the racial experiment in England had failed. And I said, so does that mean that even though I'm not from here, just because I'm white, everything's good? And he says, yep. I just said, listen, you're racist trash, and I can't be near you. And that person got deleted. That's what we need to do. We need to stand up for justice. We need to stand up. The slave trade is going strong today, not just by colors, but by religion. Christians are thrown in slavery by gender. The sex slave industry is going strong, even in this country. And we've got to start, where we see these things, we've got to stand up for what's right. And it starts with you. God bless you guys.